Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Selective Cravings. My name is Ryan Hartwell, and today we are going to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Now, if you don't know what Selective Cravings is, this is a weekly show where we talk about certain movies, TV shows, specials, etc., and we analyze them on a deeper level. Now, we watch them frame by frame, you know, to avoid copyright, and as well as giving some interesting tidbits on what went on in the making of said media, as well as sharing personal experiences. Now, I might invite some people onto the show into the future to discuss said media with me and offer their unique perspectives to the conversation. But yeah, for the time being, it'll just be me and just talking about not only my experience but also the impact it had on cinema in general. So Psycho was released in 1960, and this film not only changed the game for slasher and horror films, but also for cinema as a whole. It challenged and pushed the boundaries of censorship of with the 1950s Hays Code and revolutionized storytelling in terms of twist endings, violence, depictions of mental illness, and what can and can't be shown on screen. Now, it was based on a book by the same name, by Robert Bloch, which were inspired by the murders of Ed Gein, aka the Butcher of Plainfield, in 1957. And of course, Robert Bloch was not only around when the murders happened, but he lived near the location as to where the murders took place. So, so this story was really hit close to home in terms of Robert Bloch's situation, and so he was inspired to write the novel. And and although this film was not the first slasher film to be shown on screen, The Peeping Tom, the British film about a cinematographer who kills people with a motion picture camera, came out the exact same year, although it was released 2 years later in the United States. But for Psycho, it had more of an impact because of Alfred Hitchcock's celebrity and his brilliant marketing strategy of making sure people see the film on time and not reveal the shocking twist ending. So, with that in mind, I will just want to look at the chat, see who's there. Now, Reed, how you doing? Yeah, yeah. I hope this will be pretty entertaining. And Matt, how you doing? I heard you're watching, the Lord of the Rings show. Great to hear that. So, with that out of the way, I I legally purchased this movie. So right now we'll just go through frame by frame as usual. Okay. So even though it says a Paramount Picture release, it was actually distributed by Universal Pictures on the Universal lot. And so Paramount was kind of hesitant for Hitchcock to make this movie. You see, I guess when he first heard about the book, he was just finishing up North by Northwest, and he read a review of the book Psycho, and he was gravitated towards it. He wanted to do something different, and so now with hardly any studio backing whatsoever, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna finance this myself. I'm gonna use my own money. I'm going to make sure I have total control over the project because that's just who Hitchcock was. And so, with that in mind, just go through here. Now, the opening credits, they were done by. Sorry, let me just blank here. Okay. So, the opening credits. They're done by Saul Bass, who worked who worked on Hitchcock's other films. And the other actors and actresses who appear in this movie are Janet Leigh, as well as Anthony Perkins, and so on and so forth. Now, Janet Leigh as and Vera Miles. So I get. Sorry, let me just. Okay. So, because this is such a low budget, the budget for this film was $800,000, which in today's currency would be $8 million. So, and even back then, it's still a small budget. So for the opening scene, we have a cascading view of Phoenix, Arizona, and entering through the building as sort of like a documentary style. You see, with this with this, Alfred Hitchcock wanted to push the boundaries of cinematography despite having a low budget. But for this, the technology just wasn't there, and so it had to be cut up in multiple cuts. Let me go inside, and we see you see already we're seeing a pretty scandalous scene between. Sorry if I'm rambling. I'm just I'm hyped up on bubble tea. Jesus. Okay. So so for this scene, we have Janet Leigh and his name is blanking on me for a second. So, but this is Sam Loomis, now who is a recently divorced man who is not so much having an affair, but just having a new casual relationship with Marion Crane as her name. In the book, it's Mary Crane, but we'll get to that later. And the thing about Hitchcock's films is that he has this sense of connecting murder with food, and it's the constant motif throughout this film. So as it go on, we learn that Sam Loomis is this hardware store owner who's deeply in debt, and Marion Crane just wants to help out her new boyfriend by whatever means. But of course, because of circumstances, they either can't be together or, I guess, at the time, the 50s. Sorry if I'm rambling on. So, but so so with this, I guess some trivia to go along with this. Sam Loomis, and let me collect my thoughts. So for Janet Leigh is the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis, who would later become known as the Scream Queen with films like Halloween and Terror Train and all that. Of course, with her mother, having that connection with Psycho, there's an interesting connection right there. Okay. So if you so as you can see here on the right, there's Alfred Hitchcock, who is known for starring cameos in his movies, and there's Hitchcock's daughter, Patricia. Yeah, kind of interesting how this is. I'm not. I'm not sure if this is one of the only times we see Hitchcock in inviting family members onto the shoot, but she's really good in this one, and so she's just this regular secretary who is recently married, and then in comes the oil man who's carrying around $40,000 that in his pocket, which nowadays would be $400,000 in cash. So, and like he said, he can't he can't carry around more than he can't afford to lose. And and I and I can't really show this one, but I especially like the line where Patricia Hitchcock is saying he was flirting with you. I guess he must have noticed my wedding ring. And so just skip ahead. So Marion Crane promises to put the money in the bank, and she's gonna take a nap afterward. But in the next scene, we kind of see her. She didn't, in fact, put the money in the bank. In fact, she still has it with her. And knowing that that's the same amount of money that will pay off her boyfriend's debt. And what's also interesting about this shot is about what kind of clothing Marion Crane is wearing. See, there's the you see in the beginning of the shot, she's wearing a white bra. But in the but in this shot, as she's about to take the money, her bra is black. And the thing about this movie being in black and white is that Hitchcock knew that this was going to be dark material. And of course, color films in the late 50s now were very, very common back then. So this is kind of unusual to see another black and white film in the late 50s at this point. But the thing is, black and white is extremely cheap, and and plus since this is a darker film, it would be considered less gruesome, so to speak. And the thing about the Hitchcock again is that he relies on visual information. So there's the money, there's a suitcase. Here's Marion contemplating about the money. And here she is driving off and, and driving off into the distance, presumably try to go to Sam. But before she does that, but as she's doing that, she spots her boss who notices her going in the car when she told him that she was going to take a nap. And so she gets pulled over by this policeman who is immediately suspicious. We don't know yet, but this is something. And of course, I can't play the audio, but the music score was done by Bernard Herrmann, who, yes, also worked on Hitchcock's other projects. For this one, it's all violin. It's all violin score, just dun 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 dun, 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 creating this sense of rhythm and suspense. And it's only played when something's about to either build up or trying to stay calm, but there's still this air of suspense. And this shot right here. Now, Alfred Hitchcock once said that he was terrified of policemen, and and I believe it was told that Patricia Hitchcock said that her father, when he was 5 years old, was sent into a prison cell, I believe by his father, and so he was afraid of policemen ever since. And of course, with Marion Crane being tired on the side of the road, she tries to give the excuse of, yeah, I'm just no, resting. Is that a crime? But of course, this doesn't alleviate the cop's suspicion. So with Bernard Herrmann's score, right, to emphasizing the mood of the scene, we see the policeman is still following her, but is ultimately turning right. So she thinks she lost him, and so being suspicious of the cop who is following her, she goes to a car dealership so she can exchange cars so she wouldn't be tracked. And of course, there's a policeman. They're parked right across the street. And of course, we see Janet Leigh high pressuring the salesman. Just, try, just trying to stay cool, but she's high pressuring him. No one's ever high pressure a salesman before, is what he says. And so she decides, you know what, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it right now. And of course, how is she gonna come with that money? Well, she has it in her bag, all the $40,000. So she gets $700 out of the envelope and just gives it to them right then and there. No paperwork to sign, just right there, right then and there. And of course, in comes the policeman as she's about to head out and says, "Hey, you forgot your luggage." And with this scene, we have the inner monologue of Marion Crane. Either these are the scenarios either actually happening or she's just imagining them. I'm willing to bet she's only imagining them. Just picturing what her boss would say, what the cop and the salesman would say, and what that $1 million oil man would say. Saying, if I don't get all of it, then I'll replace it with her fine, soft flesh. And what's interesting in this scene, Alfred Hitchcock was actually sitting right beside Janet Leigh, just saying all these lines and having her react naturally as those lines are being said. So that's something interesting. And of course, going into night, it's raining. Well, That better find some place to stay for the night. And in comes the Bates Motel, supposedly invisible for ongoing uh, drivers. So she goes in, tries to find who's in charge, and there's the Bates house. So she tries to honk the horn. In comes Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins. Now, Anthony Perkins, this is one of my favorite performances of his because he plays it so either very innocently and yet very subtly maniacal, so to speak. But yeah, like I said, in a very subtle way. He play like he almost plays in like a lost puppy, so to speak, like trying to appear normal, but even though underneath there's something going on. We don't know yet, but there is. And gives her the so he gives her the tour that over there, Norman Bates. And now allow me to talk about the differences between the book and the movie. You see, in the book, Norman Bates is portrayed as this overweight, middle aged, balding drunk. So, obviously, this wouldn't pan out well for audiences, for especially with Joseph Stefano, the screenwriter of the movie, who wanted a more a boy next door kind of looking guy. And of course, Anthony Perkins was the first person to be chosen. And so with this, you wouldn't suspect him. Just this good looking guy, what can possibly go wrong? You can trust him, right? Okay. Same thing I have in Ted Bundy, but anyway. So this Marion Crane unpacks her luggage and decides to hide the money in something more discreet. So she hides in the newspaper she bought earlier from the car dealership. But earlier, Norman Bates invites Marion to have dinner with to have dinner with him up in the house, which in the book he does, but in this case, that he because of Mother's disapproving nature, that things get a little more complicated. Very strong-willed and very opinionated, especially thinking that Marion Crane is just some hussy. So instead, they decide to go into Norman's office uh, to have dinner there instead. And so here they are in Norman's office, and he talks about how I guess first he tells Marion that he eats like a bird, and she responds, "Well, Trement, you'd know, now wouldn't you?" But really, Norman Bates' hobby is taxidermy, stuffing things. That he prefers stuffing birds instead of animals because they are more passive. And more than a hobby. A hobby's supposed to pass the time, not fill it. So, and another thing about the taxidermy stuff, we see this shot. This shot right here. And I guess I guess the owl to symbolize, Mrs. Bates's presence within Norman's life. And he tells Marion, well, a boy's best friend is his mother. And even though she seems, very judgmental and fierce, he says, she's as harmless as one of these stuffed birds. And of course, saying a boy is not only a son's a poor substitute for a lover, which, yeah, and a boy's best friend is his mother, which is the famous line in the film. And and Marion seems very concerned for Norman, with how verbally abusive his mother is, and with that, Norman reassures her that even though it's fine, he always wishes that he can curse her and leave her forever. But yeah, he couldn't do that. You know, she needs him just as much as he needs her. And Mary suggests to Norman to put her someplace. And we come to this shot, and we close up on Norman's face. See, something triggers in him that that's suggesting an institution, a madhouse. Are you? And that's where the mask of sanity starts to unravel. Now, even though Norman tries to appear sane, he's a little insecure about his mother and trying desperately to keep things calm. And even though he says people always mean well. They collect their thick tongues and they shake their heads and suggest, oh, so very delicately. Of course, I suggested it myself. And that's the thing with Anthony Perkins' performance. He plays it calm, but there's a hint of madness there. And there's this whole motif within the film about being trapped in your own environment. Now, for Marion Crane, it's being trapped in the situation that she put herself in by stealing the money. And for Sam Loomis, it's being trapped with this huge amount of debt that his late father left with the hardware store. And of course, with Norman Bates, he's trapped with mother and running this hotel. And which is interesting. And so, with hearing a Norman's story, she gets up and she realizes that yeah, she's being brought into her own trap and she wants to get out of it. And so with this, yeah, and of course at this point, Marion reveals her real name to Norman, but in this case, she wrote her name as Mary Samuels, which leaves Norman a little suspicious as well. And so that just leaves with this. Yep, he's a bit of a peeper. And looks in. What do you see? Oh, see Marion undressing. There's a close up of his eye. Marion undressing and about to take a shower. You see, at this point, Norman Bates seems a little curious. Maybe, probably he's still a virgin at this point, but he tries to repress them, and he goes back to his house. Sorry, and goes to the kitchen to be with himself. And so, trying to figure out where Mary's going to find the $700 that she spent on the car. Sorry. So we're trying to figure out the $700 she tries to figure out how to replenish the money. She decides to tear it up and think about it some other time. But to relieve her crimes, she goes to the bathroom and disposes of it. And right now, I'm going to show you something historical, something monumental. That probably the first time in the history of cinema. Behold, the first time a toilet has been shown flushing on camera, which of course is a big no-no in the 50s. And the reasoning for the toilet scene, why it's in there at all, Hitchcock explains, well, how is she going to dispose of the evidence? And so that was brought up and resolved. And now she goes into the shower to wash away her sins. Oh, and in this scene, Janet Leigh isn't the only isn't the only actress to quote unquote appear nude in this scene. They have another double who's comfortable being in the nude, but really it's just the waist up. Now getting ahead of ourselves. And here she is washing away all the sins and probably want to head back to Phoenix, Arizona. And who do we suspect is coming in? Ah, it's Mother! And here we have the famous shower scene. And right here, you see every stab, every cut in editing represents a stab. And even though you don't see the knife appearing in the body, you hear it and you only see glimpses of it. Like, it's that quick. Just a close-ups, different editing. And of course, some of the censors thought they saw a nipple there, but and right here she is spilling her chocolate sundae all over the shower, and Mother is saying, "What are you doing? Don't spill." Now, what are you doing eating ice cream in the shower? But no, fun fact. Now, that was actually chocolate syrup that Hitchcock used for blood. He tried all sorts of different ways to show blood without actually showing it. That's one of the reasons why he chose black and white. Why when he chose in the first place. So he tried different types of blood. He tried, ketchup. He tried movie blood. They still didn't work, and so he settled for chocolate syrup. He liked that the best, and yeah, that's one way to get past the censors. And so, uh, before your brain processes trying to figure out what just happened, Marion's trying desperately to hold on, and she dies. And we're 48 minutes into the movie, and she dies. The main character. Yeah, that's something audiences weren't prepared for. And in the cinema, people were literally screaming and and uh and being nauseous and just completely shocked by seeing the main actress, Janet Leigh, one of the biggest actors of her time, being killed off just like that. And then you see the blood just swirling into the drain. And then we cut to Marion's dead eyes and juxtaposing the emptiness of her lifeless eyes. And we pull up. There's Marion dead on the floor. Also, what's interesting is that if you look closely at her throat, you could see she's breathing just a little bit. Now, you could say that's a scene error, or maybe that's just Marion breathing her last breath. And fun fact: as soon as the camera pans away, the Hitchcock goes up to Janet and snaps his finger and tells her breathe. And so we pan away to the money on the desk and to a Norman Bates's house, saying, "Mother, oh God, mother, blood, blood." So he goes down, checks to see what was going on, and then he's just shocked seeing that this woman that he met, an hour ago being slain. He keeps his composure. He grabs the mop and tidies up what mother and cleans up the mess that mother created. It's almost as if he's done this numerous times, that he's an accomplice to mother's crimes. He wraps up Marion's body, makes sure everything's packed up, puts everything in the truck, and look, he has no idea that the money is in there. And so he just puts it in the trunk along with Marion's body, gets in her car, lets it sink in the swamp, and then it stops. It's not going down. Your heart stops for a second. You really feel his panic right here. But then it sinks all the way to the bottom. He got away with it. And now we cut to Sam Loomis's hardware store, and we're introduced to to Marion's sister Lila, who's played by Vera Miles. And if you know Hitchcock, he loves to cast the beautiful blonde women. So that's another tidbit right there. And so she goes in and asks if Sam's there. John Gavin. John Gavin's his name. Yeah, I really like his performance because yeah, he's just this ordinary guy who's looking for love, looking to get out, and yeah, he plays it really well. And so at this point, she notices that yeah, she's his girlfriend's sister, and and of course she's wondering, where's Mary? What have you done with it? What have you done with her? And of course he doesn't know, but she tries to get answers from him. That even though, and then in comes Arbogast, Private Detective Arbogast, who tells him everything about Marion's crimes. Now, she stole $40,000 and going around to see if they've seen her. And so he goes to every single bed and breakfast to see if they know anything about Marion, and he stumbled across Norman Bates just munching on candy, which, by the way, is Anthony Perkins's idea. And Arbogast talks about how the Bates Motel is not seen by oncoming passengers, which I'm not sure this is intentional or not, but I think Norman doesn't want people to come to the Bates Motel because he knows that Mother could come to them and kill them. And of course, knowing what we know now, no, with 1950s audiences not really experiencing something like this before, with the main character out of the picture, who are we supposed to root for now? And so that leaves to to John Gavin and Vera Miles. And another thing about the book itself is that it's almost all from Norman's perspective. The book is very atmospheric, and Marion's just a secondary character who comes in and stays at the place. And strange fact, she actually gets decapitated in the shower in the book. So the famous shower scene is incredibly tame compared to the novel. So so yeah, Arbogast looks in the book, and this shot where Norman is tilting his head as if he's a vulture looking at his prey. I mean, that's just my interpretation, but it's interesting. Just munching on the candy just makes you feel uncomfortable, doesn't it? And so he explains to Arbogast that even though, yes, he has seen Marion, but she just left the next morning. Nothing special, not anything. But of course, us as the audience knows exactly what went through. And that's where the suspense part comes into play. But because of Norman's stammer, that that he's not doing a really good job trying to appear innocent at this point. And of course, Arbogast's not buying it. And of course, Norman's losing his temper at this point. That even though she might have fooled him, but she didn't fool his mother. And so Arbogast just leaves. He calls the both of them to knowing that he knows for sure that Marion was there. Her alias name was written in the guest book. That he recognized her in the photo, and of course he saw Mrs. Bates' silhouette in the house. But Norman just says that she's an invalid. She can't really do anything, say anything, just all that. But that's not entirely true, now is it? So as Arbogast goes and looks the place, he goes up to the Bates' house, trying to see if he can get in touch with Mrs. Bates. And he heads up the stairs, and we see a door opening from upstairs. Climbs up, and oh no, Mrs. Bates! And we see Arbogast falling down the stairs, which this isn't exactly my. Yeah, this scene doesn't really hold up by today's standards. I think it would be easier for him to just tumble and just fall to the ground. But it does add some sort of disorientation, and then then we cut back to a Sam and Lila trying to know what's taking Arbogast so long. Now, what's going on? And so Sam goes to the Bates Motel because Arbogast tells him that's where he went to inspect some more. And as Sam arrives there, nowhere to be seen. But Norman is at the swamp getting rid of Arbogast in his car, just like he did with Marion. So then he recognizes that that somebody is looking for Arbogast. And so they decide to go to the local sheriff to know anything about Norman Bates. Now, where is Arbogast? And Sam also says that he saw a woman up there up in Bates's house. But the police officer says, "Wait, Norma Bates, Bates's mother? Are you sure about that?" And Sam was like, "Yeah, why?" And Norman Bates's mother has been dead and buried in Greenlawn Cemetery for the past 10 years. And the way it happened is that Norma Bates was this deranged the person who poisoned her and her lover in bed, and Norman Bates found them together. So yeah, that really affected him. And with that, the officer calls Norman and asks if Arbogast was there, and of course, knowing Norman, he would say, "Yeah, he was there, but he just left." But even with that information, Sam is sure that he saw a woman up there. And the most chilling line in this movie, I think, is if the woman up there is Mrs. Bates, who's that woman buried in Greenlawn Cemetery? So now we're thinking, what's really happening here? Is she dead? Is she not? We don't know. But going back to Bates, we hear Mrs. Bates arguing with her son about about being found out about her crimes, and Norman trying to tell her, "No, everything's going to be all right, mother. I'll just put you in the fruit cellar." And of course, Norma being apprehensive and reluctant of the whole thing, she tries to resist. And also, with a little tidbit in this, Norma Bates's voice was actually a combination of a man and a woman's voice, so you can't really tell which one's which adds another air of mystery into it. And fun fact, behind the scenes, the reveal of Mrs. Bates was kept a mystery even from the other actors and crewmen. Yeah, everything was incredibly hush hush, and knowing how mysterious Hitchcock was, especially with the production of Psycho. And this is something I forgot to mention about the shower scene, is that the sound of the knife penetrating the body, those were different melons being stabbed. And so with Hitchcock, whenever he closed his eyes and and he would listen to the certain stabs, he could tell which melons were stabbed with which knife. So that's also interesting. And I also forgot to mention that Sam Loomis in Psycho was the inspiration for Dr. Sam Loomis for Halloween. Another connection with Psycho and the movie Halloween. Yeah, not just with Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis in that respect. So yeah. So from this shot, this is the same shot we saw from above when a mother killed Arbogast, but this time it's Norman carrying her mother's body, and as you can see, her face is kept hidden. So we're told that yes, she died, but then again, who's that buried in the cemetery? And so it's up to Lila and Sam to do their own investigating. Norman notices them and goes in. They pretend to be a couple. Hey, we're just looking for a room to stay. So they search the room, and this is in cabin number 1. Now, where Marion stayed, and they find the little piece of paper that Marion was writing on, subtracting from 40,000 in the toilet, which didn't get flushed down all the way for some reason. And of course, missing curtains and all that. So there's their proof. But little do they know is that Norman has a hole in between the office and the first room. So they're already being so she so he's already being suspicious of them. And so Sam decides to distract Norman and lets Lila go up there and confront Mother. Now, even though he was a little apprehensive at first, as she needs to do this herself. And another thing about this film is that they're not a romantic couple. Of course, yeah, his heart belonged to Marion, who they still don't know that she died. They're still holding up hope that she is still alive. And so Lila goes up. and notices the imprint on the bed is still intact. Everything is just as it was. And so, with the Ed Gein inspiration for the story, uh, and knowing what took place, he kept. Yeah, Ed Gein was also obsessed with his mother. That being the aspect of it, not just the murdering of women and removing their skin to create a woman suit, which then became the inspiration for Silence of the Lambs with Buffalo Bill, and of course the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But that's for another time. And then she enters Norman Bates's room and notice that he still has stuffed animals. That he's still a little kid in some way, shape, or form. But at this point, Sam is letting Norman know that he's on to him. But still not working. He knocks Sam out, races to his house. Vera's trying to find a hiding place. Where's she gonna hide? Where's she gonna hide? Where's she gonna? Oh, basement. Okay. And he's gone. And so she has the opportunity to leave, but she still needs to find Norma Bates. And so she goes to the fruit cellar and she finds Mrs. Bates. She's right there. But she's dead. And what do we know? Norman Bates was the killer this whole time and was dressed as his mother. Now, Hitchcock wanted the movie to either end right here or just continue on the next scene without much further explanation. But Joseph Stefano, the screenwriter, took took a, a class on psychology and just talking about you know split personalities and transvestite, which of course the you know the producers were very apprehensive of the word transvestite, and Stefano said, "No, no, no. This is a scientific term, and it should be discussed," because he figured that the audience was so was so con- was so confused and probably wanted some sort of explanation for all this. And of course, knowing Hitchcock wanted everything to be visual, just show, don't tell, he was adamantly against putting all this exposition dump into the last third of the movie. But, in my opinion, that this is a really well written work. And even though we use the term associative personality disorder and that thing and psychological terms are more understanding, so to speak. This is still a pretty compelling stuff as to how Norman was the way he was. Was that that his mother personality was dominant over his life, and that even though he killed Marion's sister, he really didn't at the same time. And the police officers are saying, "Well, say you're trying to lay the groundwork or something," and the psychiatrist says, "Well, a psychiatrist doesn't lay the groundwork. He merely tries to explain it. So Norman gave half his life, so to speak, to have the other personality take over because he believed that his mother personality was his mother was still alive and was jealous of any woman that he had a crush on. And so whenever he felt aroused, his mother's side grew wild. And the reason why he dressed up as his mother was to, speak for her, so to speak. Sort of like Norman was the dummy to his to the ventriloquist, which was his mother, but really it was really him the whole time. And what the psychiatrist says, he was never wholly Norman. He was never only Norman. And Norman was the one who killed his mother and her lover for that reason. And right now, yeah, everything is revealed. Yeah, we now know that not Norman is the killer, but at the same time, he's trying to be a good person. That he really liked Marion, but his psychotic mind just wouldn't allow him. So yeah, and so we cut to Norman Bates now as his mother sitting in a prison cell. Now just Norman, or mother, so to speak, looking and saying, "They're probably watching me right now. Let them." Yeah, I'm not even gonna swat that fly. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, "Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly." Now you cut to Norman's face dissolve and pulling out Marion's car. And that's the end of the movie. So, yeah, I know I need to watch for the copyright police. So, yeah, I just so that's Psycho in a nutshell. So with that in mind, I just want to thank everyone who tuned in. I probably did a bad job trying to organize my thoughts, but hey, this first time I'll probably do better next time. But hey, thanks for everyone for coming in, and hope to see you again soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.